Welcome to Future², the podcast all about corporate innovation and entrepreneurship. My name is Steve Gleveski, and each week I'll bring you authors, corporate innovation managers, entrepreneurs, and above all else, thought leaders on the topics of innovation, entrepreneurship, and self-improvement. Future² brings you a double dose of innovation inspiration every week to help you successfully navigate your innovation journey. Every Monday, I'll bring you a world-class thought leader such as Steve Blank, Alex Osterwalder, Neil Patel, Rand Fishkin, or Whitney Johnson, just to name a few. While every Friday, I'll bring you some quick, digestible insights myself to help end your week on a high before you head off for the weekend. Future² is proudly brought to you by Collective Campus, an innovation hub, school, and consultancy that works with large organizations to help them adopt the mindset, methodologies, and tools required to explore new business models and disruptive innovation in an era of rapid change. If your organization needs support coming up with ideas, testing and turning those ideas into reality, incubating teams, driving cultural change, or connecting and partnering with startups, then visit Collective Campus online at www.collectivecamp.us. And without further ado, here's today's podcast. Welcome back to Future². Those of you familiar with this podcast will know I'm a big fan of Dave McClure and his parametrics approach to customer acquisition. Well, Dave is the founder of 500 Startups, the venture capital seed fund and accelerator based in the Valley that has invested in more than 1,500 companies across more than 50 countries. Today, I'll be speaking with Arnaud Bonzom, the Director of Corporate Innovation at 500 Startups. Arnaud's recent report on how the world's biggest companies deal with the startup revolution details the bullish efforts by multinational corporations to engage startups and leverage on their capabilities. Prior to 500 Startups, Arnaud was part of INSEAD, where he was responsible for facilitating interactions between MBA students, alumni, and the entrepreneurship ecosystem. Arnaud has also developed the Asia Funding M&A newsletter and the Singapore Startup Ecosystem and Entrepreneurs Toolbox. So with that, it gives me much pleasure to introduce you to the one and only Arnaud Bonzom. Welcome to the show, Arnaud.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the program. So, Arnaud, you're currently the head of corporate innovation at 500 Startups. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to be the head of corporate innovation at 500 Startups? What's your career trajectory sort of looked like?
Oh, sure. So basically, I moved in Southeast Asia like 5 years ago. I landed in Singapore, and initially I was working with the French government. I was helping French startups and SMEs to do business in Singapore, and then I joined INSEAD. I worked there for 2 years helping students, so MBA students and MBA alumni to work with startup, tech companies, e-commerce, and also joining some VCs. And at this time, I started also to do some research on my spare time. So basically, I published a small report about the startup ecosystem in Singapore, and I did the first version, and now I did the second version about it. And basically, I was working on some research on my free time, and I was quite passionate about learning more and understanding what is really happening in Singapore, for example. So basically, I had a discussion then with 500, and we kind of found it could be also interesting to go deeper about how corporate are working with startups. So basically, it was the story about before I joined 500 and about what I'm doing now with them.
Fantastic. And I managed to make it out to Singapore a couple of years ago and spent a little bit of time at, I think it was section 18, if I'm not mistaken.
Block 71? Maybe?
Block 71, section 18, block 71, close enough.
Nice. You're very close because initially it was only one building, Block 71, and then they launched Block 73 and Block 79.
Yeah.
And now they're launching 3 new blocks, and some of them I think are above 80.
Yeah.
So you are mostly in the middle. You get the middle.
Exactly. But that's actually, it's quite interesting the amount of support that the startup ecosystem is getting in Singapore, and I know the venture capital ecosystem is quite strong there. The last time I checked, which was probably a year ago, there was about $2 billion in VC funds made available, I think, on an annual basis. Which
I think what is very interesting in Singapore is that the government is very supportive. So it's more about thinking about what is missing. So several years ago, they were thinking about what is missing is a seed stage. So then they created a TSM investment system. So then they bring 14 VC, and they were supporting them with a matching system. So every time a VC invests like 80,000, they were matching up to 500,000. So they started to do that. The Block 71 is also run by GTC. So it's like also linked to the government. So you get a lot of initiatives are linked to the government in Singapore.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So, and I understand.
It's one of the reason why on the last like 3 to 5 years, it's really booming in Singapore. We saw a lot more thing happening compared to before. Like a lot of accelerators coming, a lot of corporates are looking to engage with startup in Singapore. Also because the government is supporting some of those initiatives. Yeah.
It seems like the government's also making quite a few concessions available for startups within Singapore, as well as foreigners who want to move to Singapore to start up with new companies.
I think the goal of Singapore is really like to attract talent also. So for example, this is something I'm also looking is, for example, like how many of those entrepreneurs of today have been in a large tech company, for example, before in Singapore, and they come from overseas. So let's say you are based in London, you work for Google or you work for another company, and then let's say Google hire you to move because you're already in the company, or is your first job at a tech company in Singapore. Then maybe you stay in Singapore 2, 3, 4 years, and then you become an entrepreneur. So there are already a few cases of like some Google alumni who are working for VC. So for example, Simon from Rakuten is a former Google employee, or some other people who move from Google to other startups. So it's also like corporate may also have an impact that they are not necessarily looking to do because it's by losing employees.
Yeah.
But they have the power to attract some of those employees in Singapore.
Yeah.
Are willing to pay and offering like a very interesting position for those people in the region.
Yeah, and then that makes
something making a huge impact also in the, for example, like if you look after Simon, he was working at Google he was doing Google Korea. So I suspect he was based in Korea at this time. Then he moved Google in Singapore, and then he joined Rakuten Ventures.
Right.
So he was maybe not joining this fund, and maybe this fund would be not able to do what they're doing now if he was not there. And this, at the end, it was like the corporate attract him first.
Yeah.
To move to Singapore. So corporate are also like bringing talent. And when you have like Singapore, where you have most of the APAC or at least Southeast Asia HQ for all those large companies, you definitely attract a lot of people with a lot of experience.
Yeah, and I mean Singapore is the third largest financial hub in the world, neck and neck with Hong Kong, I believe. So there's no shortage of talent. And I believe, I mean, also just being geographically based where it is in Southeast Asia, it's just such a great place to start a business today, especially to tap into those emerging economies of neighboring nations such as your Malaysias, Indonesias, the Philippines, and so on.
Definitely. Then you still have like some challenge on the cost of running a business in Singapore compared to those countries. So for example, if you run some businesses out of Malaysia compared to Singapore, it may cost you like 2 up to 3 times less.
Right.
So then it can also have a huge impact on your business. But it really depends about what is your business and also where are your customers. The thing also, like if you want to attract top talent from overseas, so for example, in Singapore, Redmart, they got some very senior people who work for Amazon for a long time. They managed to attract those people from the US to move to Singapore. But it will be more difficult sometimes to maybe attract foreigners to go to other countries in Southeast Asia, because Singapore is not so difficult, right, for a foreigner. It's English-spoken country, very developed country. You don't have so much trouble to live in Singapore.
Yeah.
It's more expensive, but it's easier. It's an easy move. I will say it's like Asia for beginners.
Yeah, definitely. And, it can be expensive, but you can always go down to the hawker markets at what I believe it's Newton Circus and get yourself some cheap food there.
I mean, yeah, this is amazing. You can go to Lopasat. I mean, Lopasat is maybe quite expensive compared to others, but you can go to a lot of food court and like for like $2 or $3, you can have a chicken rice.
Yeah.
So the thing is, this is like it's an interesting city because in a way you can go to something like very expensive. If you want to buy a property in Sentosa, it would be like maybe 10, 20, 30 million.
Yeah.
But you can also live in an HDB, which is like the governmental housing program for Singaporean, and or you can go to the food court and etc. and you can have like a definitely less expensive life.
Yeah.
Singapore has been ranked many times across many ranking between like top 5 or top sometimes even if number one most expensive city in the world. So I think it's really dependent about how you count.
Yeah.
But it's
Well,
definitely not as affordable that living in Thailand or in Vietnam.
yeah, that's definitely right, especially not if you want to drive a car. But one final thing on Singapore, Arnaud, is it seems to be that there is a trend towards private trade sales with startups when it comes to exit, as opposed to big multi-billion-dollar IPOs. Is that your interpretation as well?
Well, I think the ecosystem is still quite young. So the thing is, when you look at, for example, if you just think about Singapore, I think it is kind of a first generation of entrepreneur who will be like people who have studied like more like 8-10 years ago. So those people will be, for example, property guru who, for example, recently, the last year raised a 125 million round. Or, for example, like Zopim, who have been acquired by Zendesk for 30 million. So some of those entrepreneurs have studied more like 8 or 10 years ago. And then you get maybe a second batch of entrepreneurs who are more like the Redmarts, Lazada, Zalora, etc. Lazada and Zalora is Rocket Internet, but let's say like those guys are kind of the same batch like 4 or 5 years ago. And then you get, for example, Carousel is also like 4 years ago, around 4 years ago, and they just closed a 35 million round. And My Republic also, etc. So then we're also talking about quite a young ecosystem. If you think about all the billion-dollar company on CB Inside or Wall Street Journal ranking, a lot of them are above 5 years. It's quite rare to have like this very high evaluation and etc. just in like 2 or 3 years. So I think it's also because it takes time. Yeah. And you can get like a massive exit and build a massive company in just like 2 or 3 years. So the thing is, the ecosystem is still young. It's promising, but you need to wait. There's a lot of things we need to wait before getting like more exit. But Alibaba put 1 billion in Lazada.
Wow.
So Google did its first acquisition in Southeast Asia with Pi. I suspect it was more like a key area, but they did an acquisition in the region. So there's like a lot of signals saying like is a lot of things happening in Singapore and also in Southeast Asia. For example, in Malaysia, you get also some very interesting company. For example, a lot of people using like picture, they may use like Getty Image or some other platform. But in Malaysia, you get a company called 123RF, and they're doing pretty well, and very few people know about them. So Malaysia is, for me, kind of the land of hidden gems. You get a lot of company doing well, but they're quite low profile.
Yeah.
Not too much. So it's quite interesting because I think we will see like more things happening in the region. And then people are like, wow, this company got acquired or this company just raised this massive round and we never heard about them before. Yeah. So you have also this kind of entrepreneur and this also takes time because you're not aware about where those people are now. And we will only know at the end. So this may happen in 1, 2, or 5 years. Yeah. But in a nutshell, I think it's still early. We have like some very interesting thing happening. But we can necessarily like compare it to an ecosystem like Silicon Valley, who have been built like on the last like 40 or 50 years. Of course. So it's a very different story.
Yeah, and every city is going to have its own story, and I think you can go to almost any country in the developed world, and everybody is trying to build their own Silicon Valley. And the fact is that it's almost impossible. You can build your incubators and your ecosystem of educators, mentors, investment funds, government support, but ultimately Silicon Valley's got a history steeped in lots of different things that coalesced more than 50 years ago to bring it to where it is today. And it's very difficult to replicate that. But, like I say, every city has its own story to tell, and I think Singapore is starting to tell its own story.
I agree, and I think also like each city or each country have sometimes some unfair advantages. So, for example, if you're in Singapore, one of the advantages that you have compared to the region is a low tax and very good IP protection. So it's like the number 1 in Asia and number 2 or 3 worldwide. So this is quite a unique, for example, of advantage of Singapore. In Malaysia, for example, you have the biggest country in terms of Islamic finance. So then if you want to push for Islamic fintech, you maybe have a pretty good position already. They're also quite strong in oil and gas in the region. So then it's also like each country needs also to check about which kind of asset they have and how they can leverage those assets to build their startup ecosystem. Because if you are in Australia and you want to build like Islamic finance in Australia, the market will be quite small.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not the best country to do it. But if you're in Australia and you want to do like mining, maybe make a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's also like thinking about, or for example, something in South Asia I don't see so much, but I saw quite often in Australia and New Zealand, is startup in agriculture. So agri-tech startups. So I saw some of them in Australia and in New Zealand.
Yes.
I didn't see so much of them. I know a few of them in South Asia, but not so many. So for example, Australia can definitely leverage that, and plus China have like some challenge about food and safety in terms of food. So they may have also money to invest in some those startup and secure some food coming from Australia. I think it's like Middle East also. There's some country in Middle East acquiring a lot of property in Australia. So maybe because it's also about this kind of challenge, so they may be also interesting to invest in some of those startup in this space to improve like productivity and etc. of in agriculture.
Yeah.
So I mean, in a nutshell, it's really like about what is your asset and how you can leverage them, and not trying to copy Silicon Valley and do the same thing, because if you want to beat them on their own game, it will be very difficult. And maybe very few countries can do that. Maybe China, because they have a huge market too. Because the government can move a lot of things, can decide of a lot of things. But I suspect like very few countries could potentially be able to challenge really Silicon Valley, at least on the short term.
Yeah.
So I think it's easier for a lot of them to go to, okay, you are good in agriculture, build an ecosystem about agriculture. If you're good in Islamic finance, build something unique. Because who knows about Islamic finance in Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
You may find some people, right? But if you decide to build the hub and make this like easy for people to build Islamic finance, to be also very proactive in terms of legislation in Islamic finance in your country and drive this initiative, you may be able to attract some of the top talent. Plus, in Malaysia, something that people don't necessarily expect is there's a very good level of English. So people think about Singapore is because English is one of the official language here, but one of the 4. But when you go in Malaysia, most of the people speak pretty good English for business. It's quite impressive because it's not an official language.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you touched on a few good points there on agriculture as well here in Australia. And there are a few, there is one government initiative in particular run by the National Farmers Foundation, which is all about supporting agri-tech startups. So quite a big push now being made by the federal government here in Australia to support agri-tech, because they do see that as the way future for us. And there is a lot of talk about Australia being in some way, shape or form the food bowl for parts of Asia, particularly as urbanization becomes such a big thing in countries that traditionally were steeped in agriculture, such as China, but I think their goal is to have 70% of the population living in urban areas within the next 5 to 10 years. So lots of, that shift definitely supports different business models and different opportunities.
Which must be already the case in Australia. No, you may have already like 70% of the population living in cities, no?
Oh yes, in Australia that's definitely the case. I mean, you take
more, no?
Yeah, well, Sydney and Melbourne alone is pretty much 10 million people, and that's already 40% of our population. So, yeah, that doesn't even account for the other cities. But anyway, Arnaud, you recently co-authored a report entitled "How Do the World's Biggest Companies Deal with the Startup Revolution?" And in this report, you found that 68% of the top 100 companies on the Forbes Global 500 are engaging startups. And interesting to note that the top 100 are engaging them twice as intensely as the last 100. So why is it so important in today's environment that large companies engage startups?
Yeah, so when we did this report, it's because we found that a lot of things is happening between corporate and startup, but we didn't find like so much report or study about what is really happening. And most of the time, those reports were covering only one country or one like specific way to engage with startup, like corporate venture arm, for example. So we decided like we're quite curious. We really want to know more about what is really happening. So then when we look after those 500 companies, we have like some assumption like maybe US will be number 1. We don't necessarily think that this kind of huge gap that you just mentioned between the top 100 was like twice more than the bottom 100. And what is also interesting is this is quite linear, in fact. Is the top 100, because we select also like 7 different initiatives that for us means that those corporates are really engaging with startups. For all those initiatives, those top 100 are doing way more than any other group of 100 companies. If you check compared to the bottom 100 or like the between 100 to 200, etc., they're doing like way more. So it's quite interesting that the largest one are doing a lot. Then so far we don't necessarily know exactly why. We see that there's a strong correlation. It could be because they have more money, because they're bigger money, and they're a bigger company, and maybe for them it makes more sense to do things. And it also maybe costs less them to have just one initiative, because if you're like 5 times bigger to someone and it costs you the same price to run something, at the end is not so much impact on you compared to a smaller one. But you really see like a really strong correlation between the size of the company, the rank of the company on this specific ranking, and the engagement with startups.
Is it possible also, Arnaud, that perhaps companies at the top 100 are, as you said, much bigger, but also as a result of that, perhaps more bureaucratic, slow-moving, more regulated, and as a result, there's more incentive for them to innovate by going outside the building?
Yeah, we're looking now a little bit more, try to think also more about are they older company or not? For how long the CEO have been on those company on the top? We're looking after like few criteria, but so far we didn't really. We are still digging like some of them to try to understand like why.
Yeah.
Because it was something we didn't really expect. So now we try to understand more like why those 100 company are working more than any other. 2 times more than the bottom, for example.
Yeah.
So we try, and also to understand why the bottom don't do so much.
Yeah, and do you have any insights as to the success of those programs or the engagement with startups? For example, comparing the top 100 to the bottom 100.
So the challenge that we have is that most of those corporate, basically, if it works very well, they don't tell you too much.
Yeah.
And if it don't work, they don't tell you anyway. So the thing is, first is like there's no like so much like sharing about how it really works for all of them, right? So this is one of the challenges. Second is like if you need to ask the 260 plus company doing something exactly what they're doing, the time you finish to speak to the last one, the first one is already changed.
Yeah.
So this is another challenge, and the last thing is like most of those initiatives are also quite recent. So, for example, if you think about corporate venture arm, if you go to Intel Capital, they started that in the 90s.
Yeah.
So this is a long time ago. You can get a lot of numbers of the fund, if it's working well or not. But if you look after, for example, a corporate accelerator will just have been launched like 1 or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's too young.
Yes.
You don't have time because like it means like company have been graduated between like 1 year or they just graduated now. So those companies don't really have time to grow and to do something. Like I think people misjudge sometimes like company like Uber. They feel Uber is 3 or 5 years old maximum, and it's more like 8 years, right?
Yeah.
People are like kind of feeling that those companies have been created like recently, but a company like Microsoft is already like more than 30 years old. Alibaba is above 15, etc., etc. So people are feeling maybe 20 maximum Microsoft or 25, I don't know, and then you're like above 30. You don't expect those companies to be like.
No, that's right. And I think
all that out there.
Yeah, that's a great point because effectively 2 years is not enough time. And the problem with a lot of corporate innovation programs is that, if the results aren't there within, say, 12 months, oftentimes these innovation programs get pulled, whether it's an investment in a startup, whether it's an internal program, whether it's some teams being incubated off-site. It seems as if there's a misalignment between expectations of return and the reality of early stage innovation.
Yeah, so the thing is we feel like there's a lot of them. Also a way to see if it works, it would be a way to see in the future is maybe in 5 or 10 years, we can also compare like who is still running something, who is doing more with startup than he was doing like 5 or 10 years ago, who is doing less. And this also could be interesting. And then it could be also interesting to track like on the ranking, the company who are going on the top, are they the one working more with startup than others or not? Like if these have an impact on how the companies are ranked in a way, are you doing better if you're like working with startup? It doesn't mean like the startup is why you're doing better, but maybe because you are more open, because you're more aware about what is happening around you. So it could be not necessarily like the reason, but it could be maybe an indicator, a proxy to maybe identify company who are maybe more focused on what is happening around them and the challenge that they may face in a few years and not so much on what is happening now.
Yeah.
And I think one of the main challenges, something like very interesting, is the time horizon of a startup compared to a corporate. because here we look after the public listed companies. So those people, every quarter, they need to show that the company is doing better than the previous quarter.
Correct.
So it's like very short term. You talk like every 3 months. If you engage with startup at very early stage, like as a accelerator stage or seed stage, 3 months later, it doesn't make a huge difference usually. It's more about what will happen in like 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
It's why also when you look after venture capital, the fund is like 10 years. So usually you do your investment the first like 2 years, 2-3 years, and then you wait to get the exit and etc. And then you close the fund after 10 years, right? Or maybe 11 or 12. Sometimes you can get some extension.
Yeah.
But basically you get like on average like 8 to 10 years, 7 to 10 years to grow the companies, right? And then to have enough return and give back the money. The thing is, how can you expect to get like very short-term results with startups? So this is something difficult. The second thing is the average tenure of a CEO of the Fortune 100 in US is maybe around like 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
So if these take like 5 to 7 years to pay off, if you start something, the result will be for the guy after you.
Yeah.
On average. So then what is your incentive as a C-level person to work with startup? And I think what we describe for that is quite simple framework is you have the research and development, right? And it's to be the same thing. It's maybe something will pay off in 5 or 10 years, not in 3 months. But almost all those companies will have an R&D department and spending a lot of money on it. Nobody discusses too much about that now. And even if I've joked about it, like you want to save money, shut down the R&D department. Then you increase your revenue, your profitability, right? But maybe your company in 5 years or 3 years doesn't exist anymore. So you have the R&D on the bottom with like very long-term focus. And you are very far to get already the product, market fit, etc. On the opposite, you get the M&A, which is very short-term. You buy strategic assets already. If it's startup, is mostly like having already like product, market fit, etc. Except if you go for a carrier and you want to acquire the talent. So you have something like very long-term and something like very short-term, a quick fix. But what do you have between, right? And what we found between is what we call the corporate startup engagement. So between M&A and R&D, you have a lot of different ways you can engage with startups. So if you do, for example, like Series D and E investment, you are very close to M&A in terms of the maturity of the company you are working with, you are engaging with. And then on the bottom of the corporate startup engagement, if you do like seed investments or accelerator, then you are close to R&D. So basically we feel is a missing piece between like M&A and R&D is how can you do things between. And so far nobody discussed so much about if you should do M&A or if you should do R&D. Like all those companies are basically doing both.
Right.
But then what we found also very interesting in this report is also the majority, because it's like 52.4% of those 500 companies are doing corporate startup engagement. We didn't expect to see like such a high number.
Yeah, that's
the majority, in fact, of them. And as you mentioned, like the top 100 is 68%. And when we looked after like the seventh thing, we didn't look after just sponsoring an event. For us, this doesn't count because you don't really have skin on the game. If you just sponsor an event, you just put like 10 or 50K once, that it. You don't count that.
Yeah.
So we're also looking after really be engaged with startups. So it's why we're very surprised about those very high numbers.
No, that's right. And there's a lot of instances of theater out there where companies are perhaps just sponsoring events or just running a hackathon, but there's no real focus on business model validation, product market fit validation or anything like that. And ultimately nothing comes of those programs. So there is a difference between that and your longer term investment where you expect maybe after 3 or 5 years for some sort of return on investment to hit the accounts. But I mean, you touched on a few interesting points there, and the short-termism that's rife within all listed companies, because they all have their quarterly reporting to take care of, and executive bonuses and performance metrics tend to be tied to the short-term performance. So how do you kind of bridge that gap? I know you've talked about corporate startup engagement kind of being the bridge between M&A and R&D, but in terms of communicating those metrics back to, say, corporate executives and saying, look, we're not going to get ROI of X% within a year. We're more likely to get these returns after 5 years. I mean, and then what metrics do you use in the first year to communicate back to decision makers?
So the thing is, usually, let's take a kind of example that happened to me quite often. I may get a corporate coming to us and say, okay, we want to run a corporate accelerator. You did this report and you're running accelerator. Can you tell us how it works? How can we do it? And usually when a corporate comes to me and saying that, I'm more like, okay, all done. It must be the great idea for you, but just tell me, give me a little more background. And usually I look after two things. I look first about what are the challenges that this corporation is facing, like now, and maybe in 5 years and in 10 years. To have an idea about what they need to do based on that. So this is one part. The second part is more about who they are. So it's about what is the culture in this company. Are they willing or not to take risk? Are they willing or not to invest money on those projects?
Yeah.
Or are they willing or not to wait to get results? Are you willing to wait 5 years, 3 years, or 10 years to get results? So based on that, then you can like quite quickly have a framework and think about, okay, maybe if you want short-term results, and without taking risk and not putting so much money, it looks like quite impossible, right? So then you also need to adjust between what they want. You can really get like not taking risk, short-term result with no money. It's like this is becoming very difficult, right?
Yeah.
But then if you're looking at, I want to take risk, I'm willing to put money, and I'm willing to wait. Then it's like, okay, then now we have like a lot of possibilities of what we can do. But also what is important is like, what is the culture of the company? What fits who they are? Because it's also like finding the best way for them to address startup, but based on who they are, not like doing something is like fake.
Yeah.
It doesn't like really represent them properly, because then it doesn't sound good from outside. So then it's really like thinking about who they are, what challenges they are facing, and how they can work with startups. And then we discuss about, okay, maybe accelerator makes sense, or maybe you can do more what we call a startup program, like what Microsoft is doing with Spark, or maybe for them it's maybe better to do a corporate venture arm. So it really depends about the profile of the industry or the profile of the company. About based on that, we can see like how they can engage with startups.
Yeah, and I guess every company, like you've alluded to there, will have different objectives. Some may want to drive culture change. Some may want to just outsource their innovation, their horizon through disruptive innovation. Others may just want to, change their brand in a marketplace. I mean, these days there's so much competition for talent, and a lot of the emerging Gen Y and Gen Z talent are going to your more progressive companies who are giving them the opportunity to innovate and, ditching Wall Street for Silicon Valley, I guess, to use that sort of analogy. So that definitely comes back to those objectives, like you've just said there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So the thing is, also now we saw like a lot of corporate working, and there's a lot of different models to do each of those engagement with startups. So it's also a lot of flexibility. And also when you think about all those people are doing, you can be inspired and create maybe a new model too. So also what I feel interesting is like when you talk, for example, to let's say a bank, most of them they're quite focused about what the other banks are doing.
Yeah.
If you talk to automotive, they're like, what is the automotive industry is doing? Which I say I agree, and I share with them what we know about happening in the industry. But sometimes it's interesting to see by industry, but also think, okay, if you want to build an accelerator, who are the other industries who are doing that in an interesting way, or a different way? So for example, Airbus is doing that in a very different way. They are doing a mix. So they call that a BIS lab, and they're mixing employees and entrepreneurs to their accelerator. So it's quite a very different way to do it. Because in each batch, you get a mix between employees to work on new projects, and they start to launch their project through the accelerator like an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that makes...
And there's not so much corporate doing that on their accelerator. So this is kind of interesting model.
Yeah.
But then it's not because you're not like, in this case, only Boeing can do the same thing, and the Chinese, and I think it's more like 3 or 4 companies in the world who are building planes at this scale. But it's mostly between Airbus and Boeing. But it doesn't mean if you're an automotive company or a bank that you can do the same thing. So then it's also about sharing with them like what are the best practice across industries, not only about people doing facing the same challenge in their own industry, but it's like across all of them.
Yeah, and I really like the open innovation type of accelerator where you bring entrepreneurs together with employees, because the employees will bring domain expertise, networks, they understand the space perhaps much better, but the entrepreneurs bring their talent, the different way of thinking, the different way of solving problems, of building stuff, of ultimately, as is the hashtag, getting shit done. So, bringing those two together can be quite powerful, and also helps embed that entrepreneurial culture back into the organization.
Yeah, definitely. So then, I mean, it's quite early to know what as a result of this initiative, if it works or not. But it's an interesting model because they have a very different approach about how to do it. So then, for example, it could be this kind of model if you want to change the culture, it's something quite interesting because it will give to the employees like a real immersion in how do you build something from scratch. And then when you build your new product, you don't maybe get the same budget that you usually to get to do your marketing, your PR, and etc. Like, hey, you're back as an entrepreneur. You need to also, how do you get like those journalists to cover what you're doing? How do you get like your first customer, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's quite interesting because he also brings the company to be like a little bit more lean. It's not so much, let's advertise and let's see what happens. It's like, no, I need to be very cautious about like every cent because it's more like each of that dollars are like coming from my pocket.
Yeah.
So he can change also the culture and how you launch new product and then it's like, maybe very quickly because you are maybe more cautious of it. It's like, okay, maybe very quickly you move. Okay, this doesn't work. I twist. I will do something slightly different. Let's see how it works and etc.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very interesting model about how they're doing it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're introducing those constraints and replicating the environment that entrepreneurs find themselves in, where you don't have exponential budget. You can't just throw money on ads. You need to be very lean with every decision you make, with every meeting you take, with every, you use lean analytics and measure only the metrics that matter and so on. And, that way you're going to be hell-bent looking for product market fit rather than just spending money perhaps on a flawed approach or a flawed idea.
Definitely.
So I guess, we've touched on a few of the challenges there around culture, around short-term metrics and incentives. What are some of the other challenges you've come across with 500 startups where corporates have wanted to engage with a startup?
I think there's like a few other challenges. So for example, when you go from startup to corporate, when a startup reach out to corporate, they know that they want to work with them.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we know that those people should be a potential customer. They will do the follow-up. They will be like and for them also is like, especially if it's like B2B companies, is having one or two more customers can make a huge difference in the company. You just maybe can just reach break-even because of that. For most time a corporate, like working with startup, maybe don't change so much for the next quarter, right? So the thing is, one of the main challenges is the speed. Because you get a founder maybe reaching out to corporate, it can make the decision over the weekend if you want to do something or really change or decide like you want to make his product for free or you want to double the price or whatever. It can make the decision very quickly. Where corporate is like, let me see, we need to talk with my colleague, plus I need to check with a compliance, with the legal team and etc. But then it takes time. So the thing is that they're playing on two very different time frame. And the thing is, sometimes, for example, for some very specific example, like for example in M&A, you may spend so much time on running on the full process that if it doesn't happen, sometimes it can almost kill your business because you don't spend so much time at building it. So the thing is like, and corporate are less in a rush. So sometimes this is a huge trouble. On the other side, when you have corporate reach out to startups, some of them are very engaged and they really want to work with them, but some of them are more like, I call that like kind of tourists. So it's like you're going to a zoo, right? It is a nice place. You want to go to the zoo. It's great. You see a lion. You like it. You're happy. But do you want to bring the lion home? No.
No, exactly.
And it should be the same thing. Sometimes they saw startup like, this is cool. Should we work with them or this will be difficult for different reasons like speed and etc. Then it's like, okay, maybe I don't bring the lion at home.
Yeah.
So sometimes you get some entrepreneur who will say, I talk with a lot of corporate, but a lot of them are just kind of a tourist, or it's like more like window shopping. They're just looking, but at the end nothing happens. So I'm like, what? And then they feel sometimes that they're teaching them stuff about what is really happening on the market and what they see as an opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think the challenge is like introducing corporate to startup. This is a challenge on the startup side. Because for them it's more about it's more like startup to be introduced to corporates. I see more value in this way because startup are like, I don't want to waste my time.
Yeah.
I don't have time to waste. I don't have so much money. I need to go like straightforward about finding the right people in the organization and moving the thing quickly because my company may not survive if this doesn't happen. So corporate have less time. I don't say they're less efficient, but they just have, they have more time.
They have more time. Yeah.
It's not about efficiency, but they have more time. They're not in a rush to be sure like the things are happening. So then on this kind of thing, you have like some clash sometimes because you're not playing on the same time frame.
Yeah.
So this is one of the, for example, is one of the challenge of the cooperation between the corporate and the startups.
Yeah, and I can definitely vouch for that. I know a lot of startup founders who feel like they've been given the runaround and they've been entertained by a particular corporate meeting after meeting after meeting, and then nothing really comes of it. And ultimately, in many cases, there's never been a true intention there on the part of the corporate. Do you believe that there seems to be a lack of alignment or lack of appreciation for what the startup is actually going through from many corporates? Like they don't get it when a startup approaches them, requests a meeting. It's actually in the startup's best interest for the corporate to say, hey, actually, sorry, we're not interested, rather than say, oh, look, let's entertain them, let's catch up and have a chat and go for a coffee.
I think, sometimes corporate may be interesting to learn about what is happening with people and etc. But like an entrepreneur is more focused about selling, not so much about and learning from the customer. So it's like learn about them and sell to them, learn about them, sell to them. And if you need to change the product, change to adapt of what they need and just sell. So they don't have so much time about doing all the thing about like networking and some other stuff. They just like sell your product, grow the company, and then recruit people and etc. So I mean, they need to move quick and change things. And sometimes corporates, some of them don't necessarily know exactly what they're looking for. Plus, you can always think, okay, let's know more, because maybe if I know more, maybe it can fit another division. And you know, you can. I mean, it's good intention, right? You feel like, oh, maybe you know more, then you can have a better. You can be in a better position to support them and see how you can plug them with the right person in your organization, right? Yeah. But also, you need sometimes to go through like different layers. You talk to one guy, and then after 1 hour, oh no, he's not the right guy. So you need to talk to another one, and etc., right? When you start up, most time, if they deal with corporate, you may deal directly with the CEO, or just someone below. So then it's like very fast. There's not so much. There's not so many people in the organization. Like everyone fit in the same room. So
everyone is on the C-suite in a startup.
Exactly.
I guess that's when the startups also then have a responsibility to learn how to better qualify prospects, and that just comes down to asking good questions, asking them who else they've worked with in the space, trying to understand whether there's actually budget to do this type of thing, how fragmented the organization is, and trying to be really, who is the bullseye person that I'm talking to here, who controls the budget or who influences the purchasing decision and so on.
I'm 100% agree, but the challenge is like in each company, this works in a different way. So then it's about really having the right framework as an entrepreneur about asking all those right questions and being able to understand very quickly if you can do something or not, or maybe, and based on that, you want to invest more time on building this relationship. Where on the other side for corporate, for a lot of organizations, if it's like senior people, they may engage directly with the CEO. So they don't have so much trouble about finding the right person. It's more about then after for them to learn about what the company is doing now, which is one thing, but which is sometimes more challenging because this is really dependent about what the CEO will share with you is about what the company may do in a few years. Because sometimes it could be like a very different, and the vision of a company about where they want to go can really change about if you want to work with them or not, also as a corporate. And it's more difficult on the corporate side to understand really like where the company is really going and what they are doing. And also the other challenge is some companies may start out doing something and maybe 6 months later or 12 months later doing something very different. So if you're a corporate, you need also to kind of check regularly with those entrepreneurs about what they are doing. Because they may change. So we get, for example, in South Asia, companies start as e-commerce, then they move to do payments. And that's like you look for a payment company and people say, do you talk to this company? No, I know they're doing e-commerce. No, they're doing payment. No, okay, fine. I need to update. And that is the nature of early stage innovation, right? You've got to be pivoting to new opportunities based on the learnings that you're getting from your customers. But I guess there needs to be that communication back to the corporate that you're partnering with, if that is the case. And I'm a big believer in what you've just said about speed. Ultimately, and a team of 5 to 7 people, cross-functional talents, relentless focus on solving a problem and just rapid experimentation, learning and iterating can get way more done than a team with 100 times the resources who just
need to call a meeting every time a small decision needs to get made. So can't agree more on the speed side.
Don't get me wrong, right? I also saw like some amazing collaboration between like startup and corporate.
Yeah.
Like some amazing stories. It's not only like talking about the difficulties.
No.
And the fact it's not an easy thing to do. There is some corporate and some startup we managed to team up and really build like amazing stories about how they work together.
Yeah, so let's talk about, have you got a case study you can share with us, Arnaud?
Yeah, I mean, there's like few stories that I really like, and I think one of my favorite one is about how Coca-Cola work with Spotify. So initially, it's also a story about an investment. So Coca-Cola have invested in Spotify. But when you look after this case, first you're like, okay, a beverage company invests in a music streaming company.
Yeah.
What is the point? Like, why do you invest in something like so far from your core business? Like Spotify, do you want to sell like music now, or what do you really want to do? And then it's like Spotify, like, what do you get about working with a beverage company, right? With how much fun do you have with working with them, right? You are like cool brand and etc. And you work with like company, it's like, I don't know, maybe
Dinosaur.
100 years old.
Yeah.
Like, what do you get? So then, what's interesting to see is about what are the challenges that those two companies are facing. So one of the challenges for Spotify as a startup, I mean, they're not so young anymore, but let's consider themselves as a startup. It's about distribution, for example. Is how do you manage to get everyone know about your product and everyone to maybe listen to music on your platform? And then when you look after this thing is Coca-Cola, they have more truck to deliver Coke in the world that UPS, DHL, and FedEx together. Yeah,
that makes sense.
So the thing is if, in a way, if you spin off the logistic part of Coca-Cola, it's maybe the biggest logistic company in the world. But people see it as a beverage company. But in fact, one of the assets, which is very interesting for them, is the logistic part. So the thing is then, when you are Spotify, if Coca-Cola put just a kind of a small stickers on or they just integrate in the design of the can, like just a QR code or something where allowing the customer to download like one free music. Then you can download like one of your music you like, just once.
Yeah.
So then in terms of reach, this is amazing for Spotify. And the cost of allowing people to listen just one music is quite low. So they get like something quite amazing to do with Coke. Then, for example, on Coca-Cola's side is about something that also very important for Coca-Cola is about delivering happiness, right? It's about how your customer are happy about drinking your beverage. How do you build a kind of a customer experience around that? Then if you offer to your customer to get like one free song, that maybe their favorite song, they pick up the one they want, while they're drinking a Coke with some friend, it's becoming also a cool experience for them. So then when you think about that, it's like, okay, maybe it makes sense for those two companies to have done some work together. But it's not an obvious one. It's why I really like it. It's not like looking like a logistic company doing investment in a logistic company or software for logistic or something like that. You feel like, okay, this makes sense definitely. But sometimes it's also looking like beyond your own industry and what you can do for startup to team up with corporates and what you can do for corporate to team up with startup. So for example, if you think about looking on a different way, if you think about Apple is you can see them as the biggest tech company in terms of market capitalization of the company, but you can also see them as one of the most efficient retail company. When you know like how much money they're making per square meter on the shop is like few thousand. It's quite impressive because they don't have so much product per square meter too. There's a lot of space on the available space on each shop. And then you can also see like Apple, for example, are the biggest, one of the biggest in a way like bank, because Apple is a company in the world having the biggest number of credit card numbers because of iTunes. So then it's like if you build like fintech product or payment product, if you reach at the right time to a company like Apple and they want to launch something, the Apple Pay or any other thing, then it's very interesting. Maybe more interesting to look to a bank. Yeah. Because Apple is mostly worldwide, where a bank are maybe more focused on the country or on the region. So it's also interesting for a startup like try to think out of the box about which corporate you should collaborate. Because you need to think about the assets of the corporate in a slightly different way, not necessarily like from the industry, but what they own.
That's right.
For example, logistics, it was interesting for Coca-Cola. And there's like some other example, like for example, something that corporate and startup don't necessarily look too much about. Like people think about, I work with corporate can give me access to the customers. True. But this is kind of an obvious one. But another one is a bit less obvious is corporate giving you access to their suppliers.
Yeah.
And this is very important, especially if you do like hardware company. Because if you build a hardware company and you want to do your first 1,000 or 10,000
very expensive, yep.
And then you go to Shenzhen. It's not only about being expensive. You may get a lot of people who don't want to do it because the volume is too low. We don't do below 100 pieces. So then it's like, how do you negotiate with them? But then if you have a large corporation who was already ordering like millions of items per month to be produced by this company, then asking them a favor to do this 5,000 or 10,000 is maybe more doable.
Yeah.
It's maybe more possible.
Yeah, that's an...
For example... Yeah.
No. I was just going to interject there because it's an interesting side note. I'm not sure if you know the company Kogan, Australian consumer electronics company, but they've been around for about 5 years, and I believe they're worth several $100 million now. But when their founder started, he basically wanted to start selling TVs, but the minimum order quantity was something like you said, at least 100. And the company basically pushed back. It was a company in China. They said, look, you need to... order at least 100 TVs. We can't start with 10 or something like that. But this company's website was a complete mess. And it was like GeoCities in the 90s, spreadsheets on it, all sorts of random stuff. And he basically pulled apart their website, got these spreadsheets that had all the prices, and built them a nice, flashy e-commerce site in a matter of days. And basically sent them the link to this site. And once they saw that, they basically said, okay, we'll fill your order for 10 TVs. So that was his way around that.
So yeah, I mean, for example, like in France, you get Orange Telecom, who is currently working with some hardware startup, and they're doing that. They're offering like supplier access. I think BMW Accelerator are also offering like some supplier access to the company going through the accelerator program. And this is something like kind of there's no value for that because otherwise it's very difficult or impossible to have access to those suppliers because you are too small. So then it's difficult for you to have good pricing and good quality sometimes. So this is something like very strategic that some corporate can also offer in terms of suppliers. Distribution is also something interesting if you work with some retail company. It's something also quite interesting. So I know like for example like a small company working with like they're currently working, so I don't disclose the name, but like with a huge toys company. And they're willing to order like a significant amount of product and distribute and sell it and etc. So sometimes this also can really be helpful for the startups. So I mean definitely like corporate and not really like the evil one in the game it's more about like how can you really work together. And what is very interesting is like if your challenge can be solved by the corporate and the challenge that the corporate are facing can be solved by your product or your services, then you start to have like a very interesting collaboration that you can set up between the startup and the corporation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's up to the corporate to identify what are all the different potential approaches we could take, not just from our own industry, but from other industries as well. And how does that align to our objectives, whether it's innovating, whether it's supporting incremental innovation, disruptive innovation, whether it's changing our brand, whether it's changing our culture, what are we trying to achieve, which program may best suit us, and then just trying. Maybe not committing to a 5-year rollout of a program, but maybe it could start with something small, 3 months, 6 months, and then going from there.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm a huge believer on starting small and lean, but there's sometimes you also need to put a minimum skin on the game. So for example, if you run a corporate accelerator, if you just do one batch per year of 10 company or two batch per year of 10 company, maybe not enough. Because then when you start to do the math, so for example, if you think about you do 20 company per year, so I mean after 3 years you have done like 60 companies.
Yeah.
And then you look after the results, but out of 60, it's only 20 who have graduated 2 years ago, and only 20 who have graduated 1 year ago. And the last batch just graduated, so it's like no results for the last one already.
Yeah.
So the second batch is only 1 year, so then it's maybe too early to really have some results. Maybe you can just check like who have raised a round of money after the demo day. So basically, you just evaluate the first batch. So even if you graduate like 60 company, you're still talking about only the first batch. And getting like out of 20 something like very significant, working very well only 2 years after, it's not sure this will happen. So the thing is, when you look after, for example, some corporation working corporate accelerator like Microsoft, Orange Telecom, Telefonica, or Telenor, those guys are looking to do that and are doing it at the scale, having like 5-7 location. So it means they do like more like 50 to maybe close to 70 or 80 startup per year.
Yeah. And that,
if you do 80 per year, after maybe 2 or 3 years, you may already get some of them doing very well. The ones are like rocket growth but the thing is, this is important because this is about storytelling to the management, saying, hey, look, we already have some stories. Because if you have 20 and you have 0 story, 60 and you're basically only talking about the first 20 and you have no stories, like, okay, so this is running for 3 years, it costs us this amount. What happened so far? Not so much. So maybe we should shut down. But I always compare this with playing poker, where it's like you play poker and you do check at each turn. You will never win. You need at one point to put some
money on the table. Yeah.
And you need to do at the minimum size. If you are too small sometimes for some of those initiatives, it may don't work. So it's also like it's good to be lean. It's good to try like step by step. So for example, it's interesting because Telenor, they're running now for like maybe 2-3 years. An accelerator in Thailand run by DTAC, which is the local telecom operator there. And now they're scaling between like 6 to 7 countries. So they did one. They see it works, then they're scaling it. But now that they reach the volume of having enough startup, then it will be pretty sure in like 2 or 5 years that, okay, we have like some success stories. We have like some startup who have done very well. And then it's easier to justify and maybe to put even if more resources to really leverage that.
Yeah.
So this is I think it's quite a good example about what Telenor did in terms of we do one, we see how it works, then we're scaling it. Telstra did one in Australia, then they built a second one in Singapore. And I think it's also part of having a kind of minimum volume of companies.
Yeah.
To be able to really have some impact on your business.
Well, that's exactly right. And I think what you've kind of alluded to there is very similar to the fund of funds that a lot of venture capital organizations are setting up, where they partner with a number of different funds, and the aim is often to have, several hundred startups in these funds, because the likelihood of a return of a number of those startups, going bang and generating billion-dollar type returns is much higher. The bigger the pool.
It's about diversification too, right?
Of course.
You put all your money on one stock, let's say BMW stock, or you put your money in 10 different stocks from 10 different industries. You may be pretty sure you don't have a bad return. You may don't get an amazing one, but you may get something okay. If BMW is doing very well, you may get amazing return, but if they're not doing well, you can be smashed.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's investing 101, I think. So thank you so much for being so open with our listeners today, Arnaud. That was great. But before we wrap up, I just wanted to get into the lightning round. So this is a bit of fun I have with all of my guests. I ask you 3 questions, and essentially, don't take too long to think. Just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready? Ready, let's rock and roll. So question number 1 is, if you could work for any company at any stage of the company life cycle, who would it be and why?
I think ideally maybe my own company, and so all at the beginning.
Yeah, I like that answer. Question number 2 is, if you could ask anyone a question, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you ask?
I would like to I had this question recently, but in a very different way.
Yeah.
10 people. And I talking about, I want to invite the team together, and I pick up a team, and I want them to talk about different topics. But let's pick up just one.
Yeah.
I think I would love to talk to it's a tough one. I would love to talk to Mandela and asking his vision of the world today about what is happening in the US, about China, about all those like countries, and also what is his vision of Africa. What would be Africa on the what do you feel like Africa could be in the next like 10 to maybe 50 years? And I would love to have his point of view in terms of what is happening in the world now.
Yeah.
And how he feels we can do like build a better world.
No, that's a good answer. And finally, Arnaud, the question number 3 is, How do you stay on top of your game? Do you have any rituals or routines that you take part in on a daily basis?
I have a lot.
Yeah? Let's hear them.
Okay. So one of my favorite one is breakfast at 7 a.m. with someone.
Uh-huh.
So I do that very often, Starbucks, 7 a.m. So basically, lots of people reach out to me, offering to most of them breakfast at 7 a.m. at Starbucks.
Uh-huh.
So some of my friends are joking when they want to see me, like, don't give me a breakfast at 7 a.m. at Starbucks. So something that I do because it's early, it's easier, you have more control on your agenda on the early morning than meeting someone at 7 or 8 p.m.
Yeah.
So this is something I'm doing. I'm doing also... like every day, I spend a lot of time to read the news. Using Feedly to do that is very convenient.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also running, also to force me. This is an interesting way. I force myself to do some side projects.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I did this deck of site about Singapore startup ecosystem. So I did the second edition already. Now I start to work on the third one.
Mm-hmm.
And this forced me to do a deep dive on a lot of things and going through talking to a lot of people and really like going deeper. So this is interesting because it forced me, because I do the presentation and etc. At the end, I do a full deck.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one was 100 slides. The next one will be 150. So this really forced me to go deeper and learn about what happened in the country. Mm-hmm. And I'm also considering to do another country soon. And the last one, I'm also running like 2 newsletters. I'm doing one about some cool jobs in the region. Mm-hmm. So this is interesting because sometimes you see also what kind of position the company are looking for. So, for example, recently Google, they're hiring someone for Singapore to take charge of the Google for Entrepreneurship for Asia Pacific, mm-hmm. and they're also hiring someone for Google Cloud to work with VC and accelerators. So interesting to see, like, okay, now I already know that Google is looking to be like more bullish on Southeast Asia / Asia than before. So sometimes this gives you also good insight about what is happening. So you can use it when you look for a job, but you can also use it to see which company is doing what. Uh-huh. And the last one I'm doing is I'm also doing a newsletter about all the startups who raise money in Asia, Asia Pacific. And then, for example, is where I learned about what is happening in agriculture in Australia or New Zealand. You see sometimes some patterns about maybe more B2B company in New Zealand because maybe more difficult to do B2C. There's not so many customers. So then you can make some assumption like this one, and then because I'm collecting the data myself, I see the pattern, and then you can also I can use my own database with all the deals that I collect to see what is happening in each country. So this is some of the things that I'm doing is basically a lot of side projects, and try to always keep time available to meet a lot of people to learn more about what is happening now. Right.
So basically, it sounds like you stay on top of your game by giving yourself extra work to do.
I mean, honestly, I'm very lucky on my current job and before when I was working in INSEAD to meet a lot of very smart people and a lot of very successful people. But something for sure that every very successful people that I've met is they're smart, but they're working like very hard. There's no secret. There's no like secret sauce about how do you succeed. They are very smart. They have surrounded by very smart people too, but they work a lot. It doesn't happen like overnight. Everyone thing is like, for example, if you think about the Pokemon Go story, what is the overnight success? No. But those people work at Google Maps before, etc. So it's also based on how you build in the past, and they know how this kind of thing works. It's not like just they start this and this works very well. There are smart people working hard, and they know what they're doing. And this is like more like some 10, 20 years about building your network, building your knowledge, and be able to do that at the right time. Yeah. But yeah, definitely, I think unfortunately, there is no like shortcuts.
Yeah.
on those things.
Yeah, I agree. And one of my favorite sayings is people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but underestimate what they can do in 5 years. It's all about planting those seeds. So where can Arnaud, where can people go to find out a little bit more about you and perhaps connect?
Oh yeah, I mean LinkedIn is the easiest way. But then there's also Twitter, Facebook, and I also launched my own website. So it's like just my first name, last name.com. So it's like Arnaud Bonzom, and you can find the newsletter, the side projects. I also try to contribute to some other report done for different topics. And I also share on this website like all the report I've contributed to. So it's like a lot of list of things happening across the world around entrepreneurship.
Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure to include all of the links in the show notes for our listeners. So thanks again, Arnaud. You've been an awesome guest, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day in sunny Singapore.
Thank you, Steve. Have a good day.
Well, that's it for my chat with Arnaud Bonzom from 500 Startups. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. As always, a quick update on the happenings around the traps at Collective Campus. We are, of course, hosting Ash Moria later this month on August the 31st. If you'd like to pick up a ticket to partake in our very first Future² Live, you can do so at collectivecamp.us/events. We have just announced that we'll be running 14-hour startup, 2-day intensive where you get to take an idea through to business model, through to prototype, through to testing in just 2 days. So you can find out a little bit more about that at collectivecamp.us/classes. And that is really just the tip of the iceberg. We've got a ton of classes, workshops, courses on emerging skill sets and technologies taking place at Collective Campus over the next few months. You can find out a bit more about that at our website. We've got online resources, blogs, videos, webinars, infographics, all that good stuff. So just check out our website to find out a little bit more about all the happenings, all the going-ons, and all of the resources that you can get access to today. If you're liking what we're putting down, if you're picking up what we're putting down, I'd love it if you take just a minute of your time to like us, subscribe, and or share this podcast with your friends. You can do so via iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Until next time, Future² out.